Day after the national championship. What is there to talk about besides the national championship? There's plenty. There's plenty to talk about besides the national championship. Here's the way I look at things, and it's not just the national championship. It's the last game. Whether if you didn't get to a bowl, then your last game was the last game of the season. So you don't get to a bowl, your last game is the last game of the season, right? You get to a bowl, your bowl is your last game of the season. You get to the playoffs, and you lose in the playoffs. That was your last game. And then, of course, if you get to the national championship, then that's your last game of the season. The way I look at it is once you play that last game, whether it's a regular season game, whether it's a bowl game, whether it's a playoff game, or the national championship, once that game is over, next season has started. So, yes, real quickly, the national championship, that was a fiasco. There's no better word to describe that. That was an utter fiasco. Georgia absolutely obliterated TCU. It was very boring. That game was over by the second quarter. One of the worst national championships I've ever seen. 65-7. Unbelievable. Nobody, even Georgia fans, did not see that coming. And I heard some Georgia fans predicting a 30-point blowout. Yeah, that was conservative. You were underselling your Georgia Bulldogs. So back-to-back national champions. And in the modern era, only 8 teams. You can only count 7, though, because the 2004 national championship by USC was vacated. But they did accomplish it, even though it doesn't count and it doesn't exist because it was wiped from the record books. They still did it. So technically, only 1 of 7, but really, in reality, 1 of 8. That's history right there. The biggest margin of victory in national championship history, biggest margin of victory in playoff and bowl history. Period. So yes, they absolutely made history. Now they have a chance to make history, not just high history, when it comes to winning another national championship. Nobody has ever three-peated in the modern era. I'm not sure about pre-modern era when only 20 teams existed. Maybe somebody dominated it way back when only 20 teams existed. But since the modern era, nobody has three-peated, and Georgia has an opportunity to make history in that aspect. Now, the thing that's really caught my attention, which, by the way, if you haven't, please hit the like button. It might seem pointless, and even if you don't like me or you don't like what I'm talking about, you don't have to be a West Virginia fan to hit the like button. It just helps the video. It tells YouTube, hey, get this suggested more because people are liking it. So it helps with the YouTube algorithm. So if you haven't, please hit the like button. If you have a question or a comment that you want to be addressed and put on the screen, Super Chat is the best way to do that. It's on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. It's that little $sign. And it's a great way to support the show as well, because even though it's technically the off season, there is no off season for us YouTubers. We do this 24/7. And yes, I always find something to talk about. Will Klein, speaking of a Super Chat donation, appreciate your $5 donation, says that game was more than embarrassing. That was an atrocity. Yeah, I agree. Well said. Well said. I like that. It was an atrocity. That was, honestly, I would have rather them just given the trophy to Georgia than that game be played. That was tough to watch. You could tell that TCU had mentally tapped out by the start of the second quarter. Georgia, and great teams do that. Nick Saban has literally said that great teams make the other team quit. Then the rest of the game is actually easy because they're not even trying. You made them check out. And that's what Georgia did. Georgia beat them into submission, and they were tapping out by the second quarter, and the rest of the game was cake. It was easy. So Georgia did what they were supposed to do. Georgia did what great teams do. The conversation that I'm hearing now is the SEC, the best conference, which I agree with. I am not disputing that. The SEC is the best conference right now. Okay? Make no mistake about that. They are the best conference. The thing that's kind of I guess, irritating, nonsensical, just grating, gets on my nerves that I'm hearing about is now people are saying, the SEC is getting bored, killing everybody else year after year. We've won, so many national championships out of the last 10 years, 15 years, whatever. We're dominating national championships. Nobody can touch the SEC. And I agree with some of that. Not all of it, but I agree with some of it. What I don't agree with is, well, let's back up for a second. The numbers do suggest that the SEC has been dominating the past 10, 15 years when it comes to national championships. That's a fact. But you're stating facts in a vacuum. If you just look at national championships and you look at the team and the conference they're affiliated, then obviously it looks like the national championship is the SEC's to lose every year. Problem is, you can't narrow it down like that. You have to broaden your horizon. All right. Last year, okay, the SEC, yes, they got 2 teams in the playoffs, and yes, both of those teams played each other for the national championship. But if you looked at the SEC as a whole, they did terrible in bowl season. Really, really bad. They had a much better year this year in bowl season, but last year they did terrible in bowl season. But the fact that they've been winning national championships so much and getting playoffs so much, that erases, that doesn't matter. What matters is the SEC's been winning national championships. So that means, there's really no competition. It's the SEC and everybody else. Once again, you're thinking in a vacuum. Rewind back to the first round of the playoffs. If I'm not mistaken, Ohio State was one made field goal away from beating Georgia and getting to the national championship. It's little things like that that some people are missing. And I know a lot of people are going to take what I'm saying right now and get it all twisted up in knots, saying go to blue, saying the SEC sucks and the SEC's not the best conference. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not saying that at all. The SEC is the best conference. I'm not disputing that. What I'm saying is the SEC needs the rest of college football just like college football needs the SEC. A lot of SEC fans are saying, this is getting boring. We're just, drilling everybody year after year after year, which is not true, by the way. Being the best doesn't mean that you're just drilling everybody. It just means you're the best. The SEC is the best. It doesn't mean that there's a huge gap like that. If the SEC split off, I'm telling you, it would fail. People would get bored. I mean, there's a precedent whenever the soccer league tried to get all the best soccer teams and do one league, it failed utterly. People like parody. Hillbilly Skeptic, thank you for the $5 donation, says, what was OSU's best win this year? Rutgers? What proves Bucks deserve to be in the playoffs? TCU deserved it more than Ohio State. Did Bama deserve more than Ohio State? That's a fair comment. If you look at strength of schedule, the Big Ten falls short compared to other conferences. They do. Now, I'm not saying they're a bad conference. They're a good conference. But if you look at their schedule, I mean, Michigan doesn't play any power teams in their out-of-conference schedule as far as the last couple of years. They didn't last year, and they won't this year as well. John Waffle H2P, thank you for the $4.99 donation, says the Big 12 should be banned from the playoffs. Watching the air raid is like watching a Navy game. Zero defense. It's always good to see you, buddy, with the nonsensical trash talk. But like I was saying earlier, you separate the SEC from college football, and it's going to fail. Both of these entities need each other. The rest of college football, Pac-12, ACC, Big 12, Big 10, and the group of fives, the AAC, the Mountain West, the Sun Belt, the MAC, and Conference USA, they all need the SEC, but the SEC also needs the rest of them. You separate the two, and yes, I think the rest would fail, but I think it would take longer. I think the SEC in and of itself would fail faster because it's just it's not enough competition, and we've seen a precedent in the past whenever the soccer league tried to do that. It doesn't work. That's not a good recipe. So I understand some of that isn't like meant to be taken literal. Some of it's trash talk, but you can tell some of these fans really mean what they're saying when they say that. They really do. And another thing that really cracks me up is, well, first let's talk about Alabama fans real quick, all right? And let's talk about the Instagram post and the tweets and the TikTok posts. I mean, it's running rampant right now. And basically what Alabama fans and Alabama players, not just fans, this is not limited to just fans. The players did this as well. They posted I don't know which social media outlet this was on, but they said, you didn't want Georgia to win this year. I'm paraphrasing. You didn't want Georgia to win it again this year, but you didn't let us in the playoffs. So Alabama's literally saying that they were the only team that was capable of beating Georgia, and because they left them out of the playoffs, then nobody had a chance of beating Georgia. Number one, that's stupid. Number two, Ohio State came really, really close. They were one field goal away. They were one knuckleball miss away from sending Georgia home. And number two, you lost 2 games. I understand memory. People always remember what happened last the most. And what people remember right now is, man, Alabama just smashed Kansas State, and Kansas State beat TCU. That's what everybody's remember. What they're not remembering is Alabama got beat by LSU. Alabama got beat by Tennessee. Alabama barely beat Texas on the road by 1 point. Alabama struggled against Texas A&M. Alabama was not elite this year. One good game doesn't qualify you to get to the playoffs. It just doesn't. Hillbilly Skeptic, thank you for the $2 donation, says, sitters make, is that right? Sitters? Yep. Sitters make small bowls unrealistic, mean nothing. Yeah. The thing about the smaller, I'm glad you brought up the smaller bowls type of thing, because, and I made a video on this a while back. The bowl committee is actually thinking about raising the eligibility from 6-6 to 7-5, which would roughly eliminate 10 bowls, those lower bowls. My idea was, yes, number one, go with that. Teams that are going 6-6, they shouldn't be rewarded with the bowl. That's stupid. Even my team in 2021, who went 6-6, got to play Minnesota in a bowl. They didn't deserve that. Okay, they were not a bowl team. All right. So I agree with the eligibility raise. I agree with that. But instead of just eliminating those 10 bowls, give those 10 bowls to the group of 5 conferences and let them have their own playoff and national championship. Now, I know that they're guaranteed one spot. The highest group of 5 champion gets in the new playoff expansion. I understand that. I would put in an opt-out clause in there. Hey, yes, if you want to take that spot, good. If not, we'll fill it with somebody else and, go compete for the 2nd-tier national championship. FCS has their national championship, and the group of 5s have been sitting in no man's land for forever. I understand now technically they have a chance because they get an auto bid, but really they still need their own playoffs and national championship, because you look at the MAC and Conference USA, they're never going to be the best group of 5 champion. They're never going to have a chance to make the playoffs. It's only going to be the AAC, the Sun Belt, and the Mountain West. That's it. Let me make sure I pronounce your name correctly. Gary Saney, is that how you pronounce your last name? Thank you for the $4.99 donation. Says, what does Utah need to do to get into the Big Ten playoffs, natty appearance? Or is there no chance of Big Ten and only Big 12? Only 3 big teams can beat Utah. That's a good question. I actually like that question. Well, Utah has AAU status. So they do meet a lot of the criteria. I don't know about the exact numbers as far as how much revenue, how much they bring in on research. So I would really have to crunch the numbers to look at that. But I mean, they're back-to-back Pac-12 champs, so they've brought in a lot of success for the Pac-12. They've carried the Pac-12. The problem with Utah is that they pick up losses that they shouldn't pick up. They shouldn't have lost to Florida in that first game. That was ridiculous. That was ridiculous. And I know it was the first game of the year, and I had Utah on upset alert because of all those reasons. First game of the year, it was on the road. Florida didn't realize how bad they sucked just yet because it was first game of the year. So I understand that they got upset, but they have to avoid those stupid upsets. Utah owns the Pac-12, yes, but for whatever reason, whether it's an out-of-conference game or they lose to a team that they shouldn't in the Pac-12, they pick up these stupid losses on the way to the Pac-12, and that actually hurts the Pac-12. And I'm not trash talking Utah. I'm not. You were the best team in the Pac-12. You won the Pac-12 championship. Problem is, you picked up too many losses to get into the Pac-12 championship, and by beating USC, you knocked them out of the playoffs, and all of a sudden the Pac-12 is not in the playoffs. I'm seriously, I'm asking Utah to do this. If you want to keep winning the Pac-12, that's fine. Do it. I love it. But stop picking up these stupid losses. Stop. Develop a passing game to where you have a legitimate deep threat. You're good at defense. You're good at running the ball. You're good at moving the chains. But as far as big-time playmakers at the wide receiver, I mean, you've had sprinkles here and there, but nothing solid, legitimate. Lock down that threat downfield and dominate the Pac-12 and only pick up one loss during the regular season, and then you'll get to the playoffs. It's as simple as that. You're already winning the Pac-12. Step number one, win the Pac-12. You're doing that. Step number two, stop picking up those stupid losses. Okay? Stop picking up those stupid losses. And I know you're good enough to do that. You're a good team. You're a good program. You recruit at a good level, especially for the Pac-12. You have the talent to do that. You have a coach to do that. Just got to figure it out. Got to figure it out. I don't know the answer to the Big Ten question, though, because I don't know the numbers. Big 12 would happily bring Utah in, and I think Utah would have a lot of success in the Big 12. I really do. They've done much better than what people thought they would do in the Pac-12. Both Utah and TCU have proven that bringing up a powerhouse group of five team is not a bad idea. They actually do well from that step up. TCU is actually the third winningest program as far as wins and losses, counting out of conference, since they've joined the Big 12. More than West Virginia, more than Texas. The only two teams that have a better winning percentage is Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. I know it surprises some people about Oklahoma State because they never win the Big 12. For whatever reason, Oklahoma State has double-digit win season, but they never win the Big 12 championship. But they are the second most successful team in the Big 12 since TCU and West Virginia have joined. They just can't win the Big 12. I think Utah, if they were to join the Big 12, and I think they will, I think that's going to happen because I don't think they're next on the list for the Big 10. I think if the Big 10 does pick up more teams from the Pac-12, it's going to be Oregon and Washington. It is what it is, guys. Big 12 is not a bad second option. It's really not. You're still within your own region. There's a few teams sprinkled out east, but for the most part, it makes sense. You already have BYU, so you have that built-in rivalry. You bring in Colorado and Arizona State. It makes a ton of sense. So I know that the Big Ten and the SEC are the prizes that everybody wants to go after. But if you don't get that, the Big 12 is a good second option. It really is. It really is. Out of the Pac-12, the ACC, and the Big 12, I think the Big 12 is the most stable. I really do. The only thing that's keeping the ACC together is that grant of rights, and really that's just 8 votes away from being shredded to pieces. And Notre Dame has one of those nuke votes, so Notre Dame could be one of those teams, even though they're not a full-time member of football, to vote the ACC out of existence. Yes, how crazy is that? All right, let's look forward to we're going to do this. We're not going to do all the conferences in one night. We're going to split it up. But tonight we'll talk about the ACC and the SEC. First up, the SEC, since Georgia won the national championship. Let's look towards 2023. Who do I think could scare some people, surprise some people? Because I looked through all my prediction videos, and I was actually pretty good with my predictions this year. I caught a lot of teams that people did not see coming as far as being good, and I called a lot of teams taking a massive step backwards that a lot of people didn't think would take a big step backwards. There were a few teams that I missed majorly on. The two glaring one, Big 12, my team, West Virginia. I thought we were going to go 9-3 because I thought we were going to have good defense again and improve our offense. And our offense did improve, but then our defense took a massive step backwards. And I thought TCU was going to finish dead last because they just fired a franchise coach. And what I mean by franchise is when you think TCU, you thought Gary Patterson. He had been there so long. I thought TCU was going to have an identity crisis. I knew they had talent, but they also had talent last year. They had that same talent, so nothing told me that they were going to be a great team. So those were my two biggest misses for the Big 12. Other big misses, Miami fooled me. I thought they were going to have a good team. I had them 10 wins, I think. Let's see, who else fooled me? Nebraska got me again. Dadgummit. Why do I keep – I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to fall for Nebraska this year. I'm not going to do it. Duke. I missed Duke. I thought Duke was going to be bad. They turned out to be actually a pretty good team. But overall, I did pretty good. So first conference we're going to look at is the SEC. Who could sneak up and surprise some people, and who might actually take a step back? Well, the first thing I like to look at is their schedule. That makes more of a difference than people tend to realize. Yes, talent, recruiting, all that stuff is first and foremost. But I'm telling you, scheduling matters. And the SEC schedule is smart. Only 8 conference games. They're only guaranteed 4 road games. And then it's up to the teams. Hey, if y'all want to schedule a road game out of conference, that's on y'all. So if these teams don't want to schedule an out of conference road game, then technically they only have to play 4 road games a year. That's not bad at all. That's called protecting your brands. West Virginia had 6 road games last year, and we will have six road games this year. See, I understand you want to schedule tough to prove that you're worth to be competitive. Yeah, but at the same time, you got to be smart. And we have not scheduled smart. We have scheduled very stupid, to be honest with you. All right, I like playing our rivals. I really do. But last year, scheduling a road trip to Pitt and a road trip to Virginia Tech, thank goodness Virginia Tech was terrible and we were able to go on the road and beat them. But that's crazy. That's crazy. And that was on our easy year in the Big 12. Our easy year is whenever we only have 4 road games in the Big 12. Usually we have 1 or 2 road games in out of conference. This year is our tough year. We have 5 road games in the Big 12. But we scheduled a road game against Penn State. So once again, we have 6 road games. My gosh, that's insane. Why not talk about the champs real quick? What does Georgia's schedule look like? Can you even call this a schedule? Like, this is such a cupcake schedule. Georgia's going to be in the playoffs, and they have a real shot to three-peat. They're going to start the season with FCS Cupcake UT Martin. That's a gimme. Ball State, that's a gimme. South Carolina at home. South Carolina will be a good team, but in Athens, they stand no chance. Then they get UAB at home. Oh, tough road test at Auburn. Auburn will be better, but they're not going to be that much better. They get Kentucky at home. Kentucky's going to take a step. Sorry, Hillbilly Skeptic, but I'm telling you, Kentucky's going to take a step back this year. At Vanderbilt. Now, that's a tough road game, ain't it? They get their annual neutral game against Florida. Florida's going to be trash again. Missouri at home. Ole Miss at home. At Tennessee. That could be challenging, although I don't think Tennessee is going to be quite as good. At Georgia Tech. Oh, they messed this up. It's supposed to be Missouri and then at Georgia Tech. They always finish at Georgia Tech. But still, that's not their toughest game at Tennessee. Could be tough, but other than that, I don't see any other tough games, to be honest with you. At Auburn, maybe, if Auburn's much, much better. I don't know. Georgia Tech might be a little bit better, maybe. Other than that, I think at most, Georgia could pick up 1 loss. But I don't think that's going to happen. I'm just saying at most 1 loss. That's it. So at worst case scenario, Georgia goes 11-1, still gets the SEC championship, and all they have to do is win, they're in again. Honestly, even if they don't win, if the scenario sets up just right, the playoff committee is not going to keep out the back-to-back reigning national champions. It's going to take a lot to keep them out. So Georgia, not going to be a surprise. They're going to be in the playoffs. Tennessee, What does their schedule look like? Virginia and Nashville. So a neutral game in Nashville against Virginia. Okay. FCS Austin P at Florida, UTSA. They get South Carolina at home this year, Texas A&M at home. Oh, at Alabama. Forgot about that October date that they have every year. And then right after that at Kentucky. That's a tough stretch right there for Tennessee. But then UConn at home, at Missouri, and I do think Missouri is going to be better. Georgia at home, Vanderbilt at home. Oh, why? No, wait, no, that's Vanderbilt. Excuse me, I skipped to the next. You know what? I forgot to write a line here, and I skipped to the next one. Give me 1 second, guys. This is what happens when you write stuff in a hurry. All right. So let's go through that again the right way. Yeah, because I messed that up. I messed that up on Georgia as well. That's why I thought they played Missouri last, or I quoted that because that was actually Missouri's schedule. All right, let's separate these real quick, guys. There we go. All right, we're good to go. So, real quickly, run through Georgia's real quick again. FCS, UG Martin, Ball State, South Carolina, UAB, at Auburn, Kentucky, at Vanderbilt, Florida in Jacksonville, Missouri, Ole Miss, at Tennessee, and at Georgia Tech. So they do finish the regular season with 2 road trips. That's a little weird, and maybe could be a trip up. I don't know, but the rest of their schedule is cake. Tennessee, Virginia, Nashville, FCS Austin P, at Florida, UTSA, South Carolina, Texas A&M, at Alabama, at Kentucky. There's your 2 back-to-back road trips. That could be tough. UConn, at Missouri, Georgia, and Vanderbilt. So not really that tough of a schedule, except for the back-to-back at Alabama and at Kentucky. So yeah, I think Tennessee can finish in the top half. I don't think they're going to finish number 2 though. I do think they take a slight step back because of this next team. Spencer Rattler has announced he will be back at South Carolina for 2023. Here's what their schedule looks like. North Carolina and Charlotte. That will be a challenge because of Drake May. But if they get by North Carolina, they get FCS Furman at Georgia. That will be a loss. Mississippi State at Tennessee. That could be the game that determines second place. After that, Florida at Missouri, at Texas A&M, Jacksonville State, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, and Clemson. They get Clemson at home. I think Tennessee and South Carolina once again will be fighting for that second place spot, and we could see a flip-flop. But nothing too surprising yet. Nothing too surprising. I think Kentucky might be a smidge better this year. Well, no, a smidge worse. Excuse me. Sorry, a smidge worse. Schedule. Ball State, FCS Eastern Kentucky, Akron, at Vanderbilt. That's an easy road game. Florida, at Georgia. There's a tough one right there. Missouri, Tennessee at home, at Mississippi State. Check out these last 4. This is the tough one right here. At Mississippi State, Alabama, at South Carolina, at Louisville. Kentucky could lose all 4 of those games. I don't think they will, but they could. They really, really could. Mississippi State's going to be decent. South Carolina, I think that's a loss for sure. And then Louisville's going to be much better. That could be a 4-game skid to end the year for Kentucky. You add on a Georgia loss, that's 5 losses right there. You can't afford many more losses and still get to a bowl. So, yes, sorry, Hillbilly Skeptic. I do think Kentucky takes a step back. And that's not. I don't think they're going to be a bad team. I just don't think they're going to be quite as good. And the schedule is brutal, especially that back half. They have a total of 5 road games, which is for the SEC, that's a lot of road games. For Florida, can Florida recover from a bad season? I'm not sure because they start off the season at Utah. You're not going to Utah and winning, Florida. After that, you get FCS McNeese. That's a gimme. Tennessee at home. Yes, it's a home game, but I think Tennessee's better. So you could be looking at 1-2. 1-2. Charlotte at home, 2-2. There you go. At Kentucky, Vanderbilt. At South Carolina, Georgia in Jacksonville. Arkansas, at LSU, at Missouri, Florida State. Florida can miss a bowl. Florida might miss a bowl. They might actually be worse this year. Prepare yourselves. Prepare yourselves. I might look at that. Martin77, thank you for the $4.99 donation. Says picks NFL wild card weekend. I'll look into that. Do me a favor and give me the matchups. I don't have them right in front of me, and I'm using my phone, so I can't even look them up right now because my laptop is kaput. Florida's going to be bad, guys. They're going to miss a bowl. I'm calling it right now. They're going to miss a bowl. Let's see here. Missouri. I think Missouri could be the surprise team. I think Missouri could be the surprise team in the SEC East. Here's what their schedule looks like. FCS South Dakota, Middle Tennessee, Kansas State at home, and Memphis at home. That's a good start. You can upset, if you upset Kansas State right there, that's 4-0. And then at Vanderbilt, that's 5-0. Then you get LSU at home, at Kentucky, you get South Carolina at home, at Georgia, Tennessee at home, Florida at home, at Arkansas. I think Missouri is an 8-14 with losses to, I'm going to say Georgia on the road, Arkansas on the road at the end of the year. You know what? I'm changing that. I'm going to change that to 9-3. Actually, I'm going to change that to 9-3 because I think they'll go on the road and beat Kentucky. To be honest with you, so I'll say South Carolina, at Georgia, at Arkansas, 9-3 Missouri. Missouri's going to be not a great team, but they're going to be much improved. They're going to surprise a lot of people. I'm telling you right now, they're going to surprise a lot of people. Hillbilly Skeptic, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, if Georgia's schedule is easy, OSU is guaranteed playoffs. Whenever we get to the Big Ten, we will talk about that. I didn't write down the Big Ten schedule, but if you want to look it up and throw it in the chat, I'll go over it. Let's see, Vanderbilt. Does Vanderbilt have a chance to get to a bowl? Well, they were better than what I thought they were going to be this year. Let's take a look. They get Hawaii at home, FCS Alabama A&M, at Wake Forest, but Wake Forest is not going to be good next year. Look for Wake Forest to take a significant step backwards. The only reason that they had a good couple of years was because of Sam Hartman. He is gone, probably off to Notre Dame. That's a winnable game. And then at UNLV. Vanderbilt could start off the season 4-0. I'm telling you guys, do not be surprised. Do not be surprised if Vanderbilt starts off 4-0. Then they get Kentucky at home, Missouri at home, at Florida, Georgia, at Ole Miss, Auburn, at South Carolina, at Tennessee. That's a brutal ending, though. Can they squeeze out 2 wins out of those last 8 games? Maybe get an upset over Auburn at home. That's doable. Maybe get an upset over a Missouri or a Kentucky at home, or go on the road and beat Florida. I think Vanderbilt can get to a bowl. I'm not ready to call it yet, but I think they start off the season 4-0. I'm going to say they beat Auburn at home. 1 more win. That's all they need. Matador Mike, thank you for the $4.99 donation. Says week 2 Oregon coming to Texas Tech. Tyler Show coming back. Possible revenge game. If Oregon likes Big 12 atmosphere, maybe they make the move. It depends on what they've heard from the Big Ten. If the Big Ten is keeping them on the line, the bait's there and they're hooked and they're keeping them on the line, but they're not reeling them in, then I would say no. But if the Big Ten has given them a flat no, sorry, Oregon, it's not going to happen. It's just not. Then, yes, maybe. And it depends on how sure they are that the Pac-12 will stay together. If they think that the Pac-12 survives after losing USC and UCLA and they're not losing anybody else, then they're going to stay in the Pac-12. If the Big Ten says, not right now, but in the future, it's a possibility. Both of those scenarios equals a no to the Big 12. But if the Big Ten is like, Oregon, it's not happening now, and it's not happening later, this is a no forever. Then on the flip side, they know that other teams are leaving for the Big 12 and the Pac-12 is going to be depleted. Then they will make the jump to the Big 12. Other than that, I don't see it happening. All right, so let's scooch on over to the SEC West. LSU, what does their schedule look like? Are they in for a magical season? Well, first up, they have to play Florida State in Orlando. So neutral site, but this is much closer to Florida State instead of LSU like last year. FCS Grambling State at Mississippi State, Arkansas, then back-to-back road trips at Ole Miss, at Missouri. Then they get Auburn. Then they get Army. Then at Alabama. But then 3 straight home games. Florida, Georgia State, Texas A&M. I think LSU stays about the same and drops in the SEC West rankings. In other words, they could finish the regular season 9-3 again, but this time they finish like 3rd instead of 1st because of tiebreakers. So I think LSU will be about the same, but they're probably going to be number 3 in the SEC West instead of number 1. Speaking of number 1, Alabama. John, I do not agree that LSU will finish 11-1. I just don't see it. Alabama, they get Middle Tennessee, they get Texas at home, then at USF. How did that happen? How much money did South Florida have to pay Alabama for them to come to their house? I don't know. I'm going to just put. I know this is not a super chat, but it's the wild card matchup, so I'm going to put that up there real quick. But Alabama on the road to USF. What? Yeah, it's on there. But then after that, Ole Miss. Then at Mississippi State and at Texas A&M. So 3 out of those 4 games are road games. 1 of them USF. But then another back-to-back, just like this year, LSU and Ole Miss. And what happened? They lost one of them, just like I predicted they would. And they got scared by Ole Miss. This year, they have at Mississippi State and at Texas A&M. And even though Texas A&M was bad, they scared Alabama in Tuscaloosa. I think Alabama loses one of those games. I do. But then after that, Arkansas, Tennessee, LSU, at Kentucky, FCS Chattanooga, at Auburn. I think Alabama gets back to the SEC championship. 1 loss. I think it's either – I'm going to say Texas A&M because Texas A&M, for whatever reason, just gives them fits, whether it's at home or on the road. Upset, whatever you want to call it. There's a loss. Alabama 11-1 and gets to the SEC championship. Mississippi State. This one is tough, guys. This one's they're going to be emotional. I know they've already got 1 game under the belt since Mike Leach died, but this is going to be a full season. Are they going to be the new TCU, or are they going to have an identity crisis? I'm not sure. But their schedule sets up like this. It's not terrible. It's not terrible. FCS Southeastern Louisiana, Arizona at home, LSU at home. At worst, that's 2-1 right there. At South Carolina, that's definitely, I think that's a loss. I really do. Alabama at home, Western Michigan, at Arkansas, at Auburn, Kentucky, at Texas A&M, Southern Miss, and Ole Miss. I think Mississippi State's going to be an 8-4 or 7-5 team. Before we finish out the SEC West, let me look at these wild card matchups. Seahawks, 49ers. I like the Seahawks. They've always had a great defense, and now this year their offense is running full steam ahead. 49ers is a good team, but I like the Seahawks. I'm going to take the Chargers over the Jaguars, Bills over the Dolphins, Vikings over the Giants, Bengals over the Ravens for sure. And I'm going to say Cowboys over the Bucks. I don't know if that's going to be an upset. I don't know who the home team is, but I'm going to say the Cowboys over the Bucks. I know it's hard to pick against Tom Brady, but I think he's running out of time. So my official picks: Seahawks, Chargers, Bills, Vikings, Bengals, and Cowboys. How did we end up with a wild card? Dadgummit, we should have won that division. Anyways, let's finish out the SEC West real quick. Next team is Ole Miss. Their schedule looks like this: FCS Mercer, at Tulane. Ooh, at Tulane. That might be an early season loss. Georgia Tech. Man, this might turn out to be a bad season, guys. And think about this: an out of conference game at Tulane. Then you get at Alabama, LSU, Arkansas, at Auburn, Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, at Georgia, UL Monroe, and at Mississippi State. So based on names, I see 1, 2, 3 losses off the top of my head. And they'll probably pick up another loss against Mississippi State and maybe LSU at home. I think Ole Miss is going to be like a 7-5 team. I really do. Lane Kiffin has got to figure out how to do defense because we saw what happened to Ole Miss whenever they took a decent step back on offense. It's not good. Oh, they did win the division. Okay. I thought this meant like wild card versus wild. I'm sorry, I'm in La La Land. Good, we did win the division. That's why we're hosting the Ravens. We better beat their butts. I don't like the Ravens. I probably don't like the Steelers a little bit more though. Order of hatred in the division that the Bengals are in. I would say Steelers 1, Browns 2, Ravens 3. They're all pretty much rivals though. Arkansas, FCS Western Carolina, Kent State, BYU. I think they can start 3-0. I know BYU is a good team, but that's a home game. Then at LSU, they get Texas A&M and Arlington. I think you're looking at a 4-1 start, but the problem is then Arkansas gets that back-to-back brutal road trip at Ole Miss, at Alabama. That's at least one loss in there. Mississippi State, at Florida, Auburn, FIU, and Missouri. This is the 3rd year in a row that Arkansas has had one of the toughest schedules in the SEC. And I think it hurts them again. And I think they're like an 8-4 team. I think they're going to be a decent team, but the schedule just doesn't set up for anything better than 8-4. Sorry, Arkansas fans. I think you finish 8-4, maybe 4th in the SEC West. Auburn. Can Auburn get to a bowl under Hugh Freeze? Well, they start off the season with UMass, then at Cal, then FCS Samford. That should be 3-0, right? Should be. At Texas A&M, coin flip, but I'd give it to Texas A&M. Georgia at home, I'd give it to Georgia. At LSU, I'd give it to LSU. That's 3. So now you're looking at 3-3. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, at Vanderbilt, at Arkansas, New Mexico State, and Alabama. It comes down to this. If Auburn can go on the road and beat either LSU or Arkansas, you might get to a bowl. Otherwise, you're looking at 5-7. And then finally, Texas A&M, with all that talent, what does their schedule look like? Can they not only bounce back and get to a bowl, but can they be elite again? Let's find out. First, they get New Mexico. Then they get the Miami Hurricanes. Could be tricky, but I'm not falling for that again. I'm not predicting Miami to go 10 wins. UL Monroe at home. Auburn at home. Arkansas in Arlington. And Alabama at home. I'm giving that win to Texas A&M. I'm saying Texas A&M beats Alabama. It falls on that back-to-back road stretch for Alabama, the second game. They always play them tough. So giving that game to Texas A&M, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm having Texas A&M starting at least 5-1. 5-1, that's not bad. But then after that, Tennessee, we're going to say 5-2. Then South Carolina at home. Even though South Carolina's good, it's at A&M. So we'll say 6-2 at Ole Miss. Ole Miss is not going to be very good. 7-2. Mississippi State at home. That's a win. 8-2. FCS Abilene Christian. 9-2 at LSU. 9-3. Yes, that's right. You heard it here first. Golden Blooded is predicting Texas A&M to have a big bounce back year and to at least go 9-3. This schedule sets up for a decent run in the SEC West. We could see, I'm telling you, I do this every year. And when I get to this part of my sentence and I say, I'm telling you, I usually get laughed at. I'm going to blue. That'll never happen. Usually it happens. Last year at this time, I was saying UCLA 10 wins or close to. I'm telling you, Washington 10 wins. I'm telling you, Penn State 10 wins. I'm telling you, South Carolina. I was only one loss off or 1 win off. 9-3. I'm telling you, they finished 8-4. Close enough, right? So I'm telling you, Texas A&M 9-3, second in the SEC West. I'm telling you. Joey, let's get some merchandise on that phrase. That's a phrase merch right there. I'm telling you. All right, I know Martin77, thank you for the $99 donation. Says, can you do USC's next season schedule? We will do that tomorrow. So tonight was going to be the SEC and the ACC. So those are the schedules that I wrote down. If I had another device and I could look it up, or if I memorized it, I would do it, but I don't. My laptop, unfortunately, is in the shop, and I can't look it up on my phone while I'm doing live. But you know what? Since you asked, we'll do another live show tomorrow, 10 p.m. again, and we will do the Pac-12 and the Big 12. We'll do the Big 10 all on its own a different night. So Pac-12, Big 12 tomorrow. We will do USC tomorrow. How about that? We got a deal? And we'll set it in stone, 10 p.m. We'll do it that way. All right. Sorry, I didn't write it down. I was going to do SEC and ACC. All right. Surprise teams in the ACC. By the way, let's recap real quick. All right. So, biggest surprise team or biggest bounce back team that I see in the SEC is Texas A&M. I think they finish at least 9-3. This is the SEC West, and they jump up to second place. That's my official prediction as of right now. In the SEC East, I think the most improved team, not necessarily going to be elite, but the most improved team in the SEC East will be Missouri. That's my take on that. So, on to the ACC. First up, the reigning champs, Clemson. What does their schedule look like? If this is correct, it is backloaded. No, this is not correct. All right, this is not correct because South Carolina would be at the end. All right, this is not correct. So the dates are yet to be determined. So keep that as I'm saying these teams, keep in mind the dates are yet to be determined. All right, so for Clemson, FCS, Charleston Southern, then FAU. You know what? Since the dates are yet to be determined, let's do home and away. Just home games and away games, and we'll compare it like that. And then whenever the dates are arranged, we'll go back and redo it. So home games for Clemson this year. FCS Charleston Southern, FAU, they get Notre Dame at home, Florida State at home, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, and North Carolina. Remember, there are no divisions in the ACC anymore. That's why you don't see Clemson versus Louisville or Clemson versus, let's see, who else did they miss? Boston College. Instead, you're seeing Clemson versus North Carolina. When's the last time you've seen that in the regular season? You're seeing a Clemson versus Duke. All right, so keep that in mind. No divisions. Home games, FCS Charleston Southern, FAU, Notre Dame, Florida State, Wake Forest, Georgia Tech, and North Carolina. Road games. This is where seasons are won and lost. To end the season at South Carolina. I think that's a loss, Clemson, but it doesn't count towards your SEC record. But I do. I think South Carolina wins back-to-back, especially with Spencer Rattler announcing coming back. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. That's just my gut. At Duke, I do think that Duke is going to be better. That's a win. At NC State, don't be scared, Clemson fans. NC State's not going to be very good. I know they got that transfer from Virginia, but that defense has taken a huge step backwards. And the offense is never called correctly either. That's a win. At Syracuse, you could have issues in the Dome. Syracuse will be decent. I'm not willing to call that a loss, but it's the Dome, right? And then at the Miami Hurricanes, that shouldn't be scary. Miami will be better, but that's not scary. So really, I do see Clemson going 11-1 and getting to the ACC championship. If they win that, they're in the playoffs. All right. Moving on to Florida State. Watch out for Florida State. They have a Heisman Trophy contender on their team, but how does their schedule look like? How does it set up? What does it look like? Home games. Well, LSU is in Orlando, neutral site, but it's close to home. Instead of being in New Orleans, which was basically a home game for LSU, this is in Orlando, basically a home game for Florida State. They get Southern Miss at home, FCS North Alabama. They get the Hurricanes at home. They get Syracuse at home, Duke at home, Virginia Tech at home. I think they run the slate. Win, 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 win. Road tests. Regular season finale at Florida. Florida's not going to be good. That's a win. At Boston College, they're going to be terrible. That's a win. At Clemson, probably going to be a loss. But competitive loss. At Wake Forest, win. Wake Forest taking a massive step backwards in that Pitt. I think Florida State's going to be Pitt. So I see Florida State and Clemson both finishing 11-1. Yes, Clemson beats Florida State, but Florida State still gets into the ACC championship. This is a rematch. Florida State could win that rematch and win the ACC. I'm telling you. Next up, Syracuse. I think they'll be decent, but not much else. Home games, FCS Colgate, Western Michigan, Army, Boston College, Pitt, Clemson, Wake Forest. Road games, Purdue, out-of-conference road game. Florida State lost. North Carolina lost. Georgia Tech lost. Tech's going to be better. Virginia Tech, probably a win. Syracuse, you're looking at 7-5. Louisville, I do think Louisville will be better. I think Jeff Brom is a much better coach than Scott Satterfield, and I think Louisville has a ton of talent. What does their schedule look like, though? Home games, Georgia Tech in Atlanta. Well, we'll call that a road game, so let me flip that. Home games, FCS Murray State, Kentucky, Boston College, Notre Dame, winnable game, Virginia, Duke, Virginia Tech. Road games. They only have 3 true road games. 3. The true road games are at NC State, which is a win. NC State's not going to be good. At Miami, that's winnable. And at Pitt, also winnable. 2 neutral games. Georgia Tech in Atlanta, winnable. And Indiana in Indianapolis. Are you ready for the I'm telling you moment? Louisville takes a significant step forward in 2023. Significant. I think Louisville could have a 10-win season. I'm not willing to say that they're going to win the ACC or get to the ACC championship. I do think Louisville could be looking at a 10-win season. The schedule sets up perfectly. I mean, toughest road trip, Pitt, maybe? Pitt? Even if they lose that game, that's still you're looking at a 10-2 season, Louisville. Cardman, if you're watching, I'm telling you, 10 wins. I see it for Louisville. I'm telling you, 10-win season for Louisville. NC State fans, y'all might want to look away. All right, home games, FCS VMI, Marshall. Marshall's the road killer. Last year, they went on the road and beat Notre Dame. They could do it to NC State, I'm telling you. Clemson at home, doesn't matter. Clemson will beat you. Louisville at home, doesn't matter. Louisville's going to beat you. North Carolina at home, doesn't matter. They're going to beat you. Notre Dame at home, yikes, doesn't matter. They're going to beat you. At Virginia, you could sneak a win. At Wake Forest, you could sneak a win. At Duke, you're losing that game. Duke is a better team. Miami at home, you could win that game. At Virginia Tech. Hot take coming, guys. NC State misses a bowl. I'm telling you, that defense is taking a huge step backwards this year. And they draw a lot of tough cross-divisional people on their schedule, including Notre Dame. I know a lot of them are at home. That's not going to matter. Buckle up, NC State fans. This is going to be a bumpy season. It's going to be a bumpy season. Maybe the offense can drag you into a bowl at 6-6, maybe. But I don't think so. Yikes. That's all I can say. What about Wake Forest? I think Wake Forest is in the same scenario. No Sam Hartman, no hope. Home games, FCS, Elon, Vanderbilt, Florida State, NC State, and Pitt. Holy crap. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They got 6 true road games. Oh, Georgia Tech, they also get at home. Road games at Old Dominion, at Notre Dame, at Clemson, at Syracuse, at Duke, at Virginia Tech. Wake Forest might limp into a bowl at 6-6. I don't think so. I think Wake Forest also takes a massive step backwards, and no bowl for you. Telling you, Wake Forest, no bowl next year. Boston College. Should I even bother with Boston College? They're going to be terrible. Northern Illinois, Holy Cross, at Army, UConn, Florida State, Virginia Tech, at Louisville, at Syracuse, Miami, Virginia, at Georgia Tech, at Pitt. You're going to suck. No ball. North Carolina. Well, from the way their schedule sets up, North Carolina might make a case for the ACC championship. I'm sticking with Clemson and Florida State. I think they'll be the two best. And the deciding game will be a road loss to Clemson and maybe pick up one more loss down the road. 10-win season, which is good. I don't think it'll be good enough to get into the ACC championship. Home games, they get South Carolina in Charlotte, so that's neutral. Appalachian State at home, Minnesota at home, FCS Campbell, Duke, Miami Hurricanes, Syracuse, and Virginia. Just 4 true road tests at Georgia Tech, at NC State, at Clemson, at Pitt. This will be a three-team race. Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina. I'm picking Clemson and Florida State, but I'm counting on some type of tiebreaker putting in Florida State over North Carolina. Maybe they're going to finish ranked higher because I have both Florida State and North Carolina losing to Clemson because they're both road games for both those teams. So I'm rolling the dice and saying that Florida State finishes ranked higher, and that's why they get the nod. But North Carolina could be a one-loss team because it's either one loss or 10 wins. This is an easy schedule. So North Carolina fans, you're good. Pitt. What about Pitt? Well, they got Jerkovich from Boston College. That's the good news. The bad news is you have 6 true road games. That's not good. Here's your home games. FCS Wofford, Cincinnati, even that's a test. I think you win it, but it's a test. Boston College, Florida State, Louisville, and North Carolina. So even your home games, I mean, you get Florida State, Louisville, who I think are going to be even better, and North Carolina is going to be a 10-win. Some of those could be losable, but on top of that, you get a road trip to West Virginia, and as bad as West Virginia is, this is the backyard brawl, and West Virginia almost went on the road and beat you in the backyard brawl last year. A 5-7 West Virginia team almost didn't do it. I know almost only counts in horseshoes and grenades, but they almost went on the road and beat you with a 7-point lead. And 4th and inches, Neil Brown, like an idiot, decides to not go for it, punts it away, and the rest is history. I think Pitt loses on the – this is not the West Virginia fandom talking. This is – I saw what I saw last year. As bad as West Virginia was, we were still in that football game. Shoulda, coulda, woulda won. That's going to be a loss. Maybe a close loss, maybe an overtime loss. I don't know. I'm going to be there. I'm going to make sure that's a loss, okay? I'm sorry, Pitt. I'm going to make sure that that's a loss. At Duke. Duke's going to be much better, but coin flip. Winnable, but coin flip. At Notre Dame, that's a loss. At Syracuse, it's in the dome. I don't know. It just depends on if Syracuse gets up in that game. At Virginia Tech, that's actually easy. At Wake Forest, at easily. So you do get bailed out with at Virginia Tech and at Wake Forest. But I think you're looking at 7-5. I think you beat Wofford, Cincinnati, Virginia Tech, Wake Forest, Boston College. That's 5 for sure wins. I'm going to give you coin flip at Syracuse. And maybe you do beat Louisville at home. So I'm going to say 7-5 for Pitt based on that. Duke. They finished 8-4 this year. Can they do better? With their home games, FCS Lafayette, Northwestern, both should be wins. Clemson at home, that's a loss. Notre Dame at home, that's a loss. Pitt at home, coin flip, leaning towards loss, but I'm not sure. At North Carolina, loss. At Virginia, that's a win. NC State at home, that's a win. Wake Forest, that's a win. At Florida State, loss. At Louisville, loss. You're going to limp to a bowl of 6-6. That's all I got for you, Duke. I'm sorry. The schedule just doesn't set up for anything much better than that. It just doesn't. The ending, well, the dates aren't set, so that's not technically the ending. But at Florida State, at Louisville, I don't like that. I think those are both losses. But I don't have very many Duke football subscribers, so that doesn't really matter. What about Georgia Tech? I'm excited about Georgia Tech. Let's run through the schedule. Louisville in Atlanta. I think that's a close, maybe overtime-ish loss because I do think Louisville's better. But I think that's going to be a competitive game. Then you get FCS South Carolina State. Then at Ole Miss. I actually think that's a winnable game for Georgia Tech. Am I calling it a win? No, but it wouldn't surprise me. Bowling Green at home. Georgia at home. That's the last game of the year, though. North Carolina at home. Boston College at home. Syracuse at home. So that's 4 wins from home. What about the road? Ole Miss, I think that's winnable. I'm going to call 5 on that. At Clemson, no. At Miami, yes. That's 6. At Virginia, 7. At Wake Forest, 8. I know it sounds crazy, but I think I'm telling you, I think Georgia Tech is a 7-5-ish type of team. 8-4 wouldn't surprise me, but I'm gonna lowball this a little bit. At least 6-6 getting to a bowl. Georgia Tech will get to a bowl next year, but I like 7-5 the most. 7-5 the most. What about the Miami Hurricanes? Well, they get the dream matchup. Miami of Ohio. The Battle of the Miamis. It is finally happening, people, this year. Miami, Florida is playing Miami, Ohio at home. Should be a good one, right? Then they get Texas A&M at home, which I actually think they lose. At Temple, at Florida State, loss. Georgia Tech at home, loss. Virginia at home, at North Carolina, loss. At Boston College, Clemson at home, loss. Louisville at home, loss. At NC State, you're looking at like 6-6. It's not going to be much better. You'll get to a bowl, but just barely. Finally, the Virginia schools. Home games. James Madison, FCS William & Mary, Virginia Tech, Duke, Georgia Tech, NC State. Neutral game against Tennessee in Nashville. Road games at Maryland, at Louisville, at Miami Hurricanes, at North Carolina, at Boston College, at Missouri. I think Virginia is going to be a better team, but the schedule, no bowl. No bowl, Virginia. I'm sorry. You will be better, but no bowl. No bowl. What about the Virginia Tech Hokies? Man, I would not like to be a fan of the Hokies this year or the coming year. Home games. Old Dominion, Purdue, Pitt, NC State, Syracuse, Wake Forest. I mean, that's 3 probable losses, and we haven't even gotten to the road slate. Road slate at Rutgers. Rutgers isn't a powerhouse, but Greg Schiano has them playing better, and I do think that Rutgers is a bowl team. That can be a loss. At Marshall, yes, that can be a loss. At Virginia, I think you win that game. At Boston College, I think you win that game too. At Florida State, loss. At Louisville, loss. You might be 1 win better than what you were last year. 5-7, still missing the bowl. Virginia's still living in misery. So to recap, in the ACC, the 3 best teams, Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina. I have it Clemson versus Florida State via some type of tiebreaker between Florida State and North Carolina. The team that I think will surprise people the most, biggest bounce back, 2 teams, Georgia Tech and Louisville. And I'm going to back that up with I'm telling you. John Waffle H2P, thank you for the $1.99 super chat. Says Pitt is controlling the transfer portal. That's a very generic statement. What does that mean? What do you mean controlling the transfer portal? Are they like picking up some big time transfers, like key positions, 4 stars, 5 stars? That was a generic statement, man. Might want to zero in on that one. But as far as Pitt goes, once again, I think they get to a bowl, 7-5-ish. They just have a tough schedule. If the schedule was a little bit easier, then perhaps you could be sniffing a 9-3 or a 10-win season. But you don't have a Biletnikoff award-winning wide receiver on your team. You don't have a future NFL starter right out of the gates in Kenny Pickett. Jurkovich is good, but he's not Kenny Pickett good. Neither was Keaton Slovis. So good team, yes, but not great like you were in 2021. And yes, as a West Virginia fan, it pains me to say it, Pitt was great in 2021. They really were. They won the ACC, got 10 wins. They had a lot of good players. John Waffle says ACC players coming elite package. That's still super generic, man. I mean, there's believe it or not, there's still players from the SEC that are only like 2, 3 stars. You could be getting a transfer from Vanderbilt who is a third string punter. That's not specific. But anyways, I don't think Pitt's going to be a bad team. I think the worst teams in the ACC, the Virginias, Wake Forest is going to take the big step back. Boston College is going to be a doormat team, and NC State. I think NC State misses a bowl. So don't be surprised when most of this happens. I'm not 100%. I'm not perfect. I am human. I do make mistakes, but I do know what I'm talking about most of the time. Sometimes I don't. I'm going to be honest. Sometimes I don't, but most of the time I do know what I'm talking about. I hit some big time predictions last year that a lot of people didn't see coming. Missed. I think if I actually counted 5 bad misses, there were 5 bad misses, but overall I had some pretty good hits. The 9-3 prediction for West Virginia was really, really bad. I didn't realize that our defense was going to take it, because you got to realize West Virginia was relying on their defense the 3 years prior. In the offseason, they make good decisions on offense, so I'm thinking defense going to be good. Once again, offense going to be much better. That didn't happen. Offense was better, but the defense tanked. I don't know what happened. John Waffle says, why hating BC? I'm not hating them. I'm just speaking the facts. Losing Jerkovich hurt them badly, and they were already bad. Bad, bad, bad. I don't care about the Big 12 bowl showing. I'm not a conference homer. So you're correct, but I really don't care. I don't understand people that are, like super I worry about my team. I don't, I was pulling for TCU in the national championship because I pulled for the underdog. Just like last year, I pulled for Georgia. Georgia was the underdog. I wanted Georgia to win. This year, I wanted TCU to win because they were the underdog, but it didn't break my heart when they lost, because I'm not a conference homer. It's a Big 12. So yes, Big 12 had a terrible, terrible showing in the bowls this year. Last year, it was the complete opposite. The Big 12 actually I think they had the best bowl record, and the SEC had one of the worst. It changes from year to year. Last year, SEC was one of the worst conferences in bowls. This year, better, not like super elite, but much better. And then last year, the Big 12 was one of the best, but this year, one of, if not the worst. So the competition gap that SEC fans are trying to create between the SEC and everybody else, it's not like that. I mean, Georgia was a field goal away from not even making the national championship. Had Ohio State kicked that in, Georgia wouldn't even been in the national championship. Edom Dog said Georgia last year was not the underdog. They were favored to win the Natty versus Bama by 3. Yes, that is correct. But most people thought that the mentality, Georgia couldn't get over it because they laid an egg against Alabama. Whenever I watched the SEC championship, to me, I'm not saying, well, you know what? I am saying this because nothing else makes sense. You watch Georgia before the SEC championship last year and Georgia after the SEC championship, all those teams were the same. They dominated the regular season and they dominated the playoffs and national championship. The SEC championship didn't make any sense whatsoever. That team was different than all the other teams. It looked like Georgia laid down for Alabama. Maybe they played politics for Alabama to get them in. I don't know. I'm just telling you what I saw. That Georgia team didn't look like every other Georgia team in every other game. So going into the national championship, most people thought that Alabama had this mental edge and Georgia couldn't get over the hump. Man, they just can't beat Alabama even when they have the better team. They just can't beat Alabama. So yeah, I consider them underdogs because they hadn't got over that hump. This year, they were overwhelmingly the favorite. I mean, a 13-point favorite, that was one of the largest favorites. So I pulled for TCU just because they were the underdog. But as far as like I explained at the beginning of the show, whenever SEC fans say, there's such a big gap between the SEC and everybody else as far as competition because, the SEC has won so many out of so many years. You're stating facts in a vacuum. Yes, the SEC has won the most titles in, 10, 15 years, something like that. But sometimes they've had terrible bowl seasons. This year they had a better bowl season. So are they the best at winning one game right now? Yeah. Yeah, the SEC is the best at winning one game when they get to the national championship and they go up against the second best team or possibly the first best team and they just overcome. They're the best at winning that one game. But the gap, the competitive gap between it's the SEC and everybody else, it's not as significant as a lot of SEC fans want you to believe. And the narrative right now is, the SEC's getting bored, beating up on everybody, and just winning national championship after national. All right, then split off and try your own thing. Wouldn't work out very well. And that's not saying you would turn into a bad conference. I'm just saying people wouldn't be interested because it's a proven fact. People like the underdog, the Cinderella story, the what if scenarios. People love that. Soccer tried that with that elite league. It utterly failed. They tried to take the best of the best soccer clubs, put them together. People want to see just the best battle the best. No, they don't. People don't just want to see the best battle the best all the time. People want to see, a chance for the underdog to do something or a chance for a team to come out of nowhere. College football, the rest of college football needs the SEC, but the SEC needs the rest of college football. And this is what I'm talking about right here. Benjamin Hawks. I mean, Alabama would have blasted most of TCU's schedule. LSU and Tennessee are both much more talented than TCU. Sir, Alabama didn't look good at all during the regular season. And Alabama had another common opponent. Texas, was it? Both were road trips. And TCU was one scoop and score away from blowing out Texas 24-7. And Alabama struggled by one. That's a terrible take. That's a bad argument. Alabama lost those two games, and they looked bad in other games. They beat Texas by one, and Texas wasn't super elite. Texas also got beat by TCU. I just mentioned it. And they struggled against Texas A&M at home. I'm sorry, Alabama did not belong in the playoffs. They didn't win the necessary games. Had they had TCU's schedule, they'd probably still be 10-2. That's my take on it. That's just the Alabama nonsense after, and it all happened. Two things happened that has started this Alabama nonsense. They blasted Kansas State, and Georgia blasted TCU. They forgot about the common opponent with Texas. They forgot about how bad Alabama looked during the regular season as well. And they forgot about TCU beating Michigan. It was two games that changed everything. And now all of a sudden, Alabama deserved to be in the playoffs. And if Alabama would have had TCU's schedule, they would be in the playoffs. Come on. Just stop. Just stop. No, that's not how the real world works. And it's just nonsense, to be honest with you. Anyways, I'm wrapping this up. I got to go to bed. Got to take the kids to school in the morning and get my day started putting videos out for you guys. But we'll be back tomorrow evening at 10 p.m. We will do the Big 12 schedule and the Pac-12 schedule. Tim, was it Tim? Yeah, it was Tim. Tim Prangley No, it was Martin77. That's a USC fan gave that suggestion through a super chat, so we will do that. We're gonna have to agree to disagree. Eat 'em dogs podcast. I totally disagree with you. They would have also gone 10-2, just like they did with the SEC. But anyways, we'll just have to agree to disagree on that. And even the common opponents, sort of prove that as well. But anyways, people are going to believe what they want to believe. Alabama just wasn't a playoff team this year. Y'all have a good night. We'll be back at 10 p.m. to do this all over again. All the arguing, all the talking, all the commenting. That's what makes this fun. It makes this fun. The back and forth, the what ifs. Let's switch schedules and see what happened. Well, it would be cool if we could actually do that, but we can't do that. But y'all enjoy the rest of your night, what's left of it, and we'll be back at 10 p.m. tomorrow. We'll try to keep this on a 10 p.m. schedule. I think it worked out well. Y'all have a good rest of your Tuesday.